Canadian.
I like
Canadian bacon. Or ham, I should say.
So welcome to another wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And my name is Grant.
And today we're taking a look at Gallipoli 1915, Churchill's Greatest Gamble. This is from GMT Games. It's designed by Jeffrey Phillips.
Phipps, right?
Yes, Jeffrey Phipps. And this is the first game in the Rifle and Spade series.
So what is that evocative of? Rifle and spade.
Well,
lots of trench and entrenchments and...
Yeah. And that's what this is. This is a series of World War I games. And this is basically the entire of the Gallipoli campaign. It's a big game.
Yes. Huge.
Yes. This is...
It's only two-mapper.
It's a two-mapper.
But it's huge.
But it's a monster game to do.
It is.
You play with a scale that's very interesting. He refers to a lot of things as brigaments.
Which is a made-up word.
Yeah. It's things are either brigades or regiments. Depending on which faction it is and who they're using, but the sizes are generally the same. It is a chit pull game.
Yep.
So you pull a chit. This is which particular division within said brigament
that gets activated.
But within there's some like sub rules about how that goes as well.
It's a very different form of chit pull.
Yes.
You actually roll off for initiative.
Every time.
Which is very interesting. Then the winner chooses whether they draw from their chit draw cup. So it's each side has their own chit draw cup.
Yes.
It's not a combined one. So the winner gets to decide, do I draw my own chit or do I force my opponent to draw a chit?
And then whoever becomes the active player based on that decision rolls another dice.
Yep.
And that dice, there's a slight chance that
you have to
they'll
roll a
get
3 or less, I think.
You had to roll a 3 or less. I had to roll a 2 or less.
A 2 or less.
And those are that's game specific. Yep. You know, I had to roll. There's a small chance. You know, mine was a 1 in 5 chance that I could literally fish out and choose which one I wanted. 4 out of 5 chance that I had to pull randomly.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of nuance to that. But it can set you up, you know, if you roll well a couple times, you might be able to kind of have a bit more control over what happens. So there's some neat stuff to that, and there's some modifiers to some of those rolls based on, in this one at least, there's some topographical features. If you have a high ground, it's easier for you to kind of gain that. To
survey the battlefield, and you gain initiative a little easier.
Yeah. So there's
which is interesting.
Neat aspects to that, and when you do, you know, you pull your chit, it's a particular division, and you activate all the battalions in that division, and they have a division headquarters as well as the kind of brigade or regimental headquarters kind of back here
which
as well.
Is also a really interesting concept, not dissimilar to other war games, but it's different. They don't offer command, they have to end within I can't remember how many hexes it was.
So there's basically...
It's based on your objective that you chose.
So
sorry, it was a little complex. We're trying to remember.
It doesn't... Your units don't have a command range. Your headquarters don't have a command range. But everything has to be within messaging distance.
Yes.
So you can have your headquarters, and you can have a long line of units adjacent.
As long as they're not...
Runners can go all up and down, no big deal.
But if there's a different formation set of units within that chain of command, that breaks it.
Yes.
So that was the difference. If you had an artillery piece from another division
you start to get your intermingled units kind of spread out. That's bad. You can't get runners to your extremities. But there's also, you're allowed to have an open hex between them if that's close terrain, which is like... What were these called? What was it called?
Scrub.
Scrub, that's what it is.
Scrub. Scrub and high scrub.
Yes. You can have a certain number of hexes, like 1, but you can have a couple of those in between your battalions, because runners can use that scrub to get between battalions.
It's easily maneuverable.
Yeah, whereas they're like, if it's the open ground, they would have been picked off by snipers and things like that. So if you're on open ground, you have to be closer together, which is interesting. And
it was very
not
interesting.
Usually the case.
Yep.
Usually, if it's rough terrain, you end up getting closer together, and the open terrain, a bit more freedom. Not the case in this one.
Right.
The map is... I thought the map was good.
It is good, but the colors are too similar. And I struggled with that.
I struggled with the Ottomans because the Ottoman piece is the same color as the map. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay.
It was just hard to... I felt like they were all obscured. Now, the higher ground, the dark brown, the highest elevations, those were easy to pick out. You might have had a more difficult time if your units were on those.
Maybe.
But they just seemed hard to... it seemed hard to identify quickly.
I felt it was pretty decent. When it referred to named things,
they were hidden most
things
more
like were
often than
objective
not.
hexes. They're like, you have to take this hex and this hex. We had to move stacks to do it. That was a bit annoying, but so I wish in the victory conditions they just put a hex number. I don't think those were in there, which was a little bit.
Which the numbers are easier to find there on the sides of the hexes.
But this was a game where at first, when I first opened it, I was like, oh, this is such a cool map. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is awfully green. I don't remember.
It's very green. Yeah.
But the green isn't, this is forest and grass.
Right. It's
a color
elevation.
scale of elevation, and printed onto that are the different terrain types.
Yeah.
So it looks nice and lush, but really it's like
it's
basically arid
desert-like,
the whole time. But it was an interesting way of doing elevation without having like just a ton of like circles or contour lines. It's just a color shading of the map, which was it was interesting.
And the cliff edges were marked with a dark brown line. Yeah, and I thought those were very easy to pick out, and it was easy to identify where you would have more difficulty getting. You wanted to use those in your defense because it adds a modifier when someone's attacking up or you're shooting down. What's that called? Plunging?
Yeah, there's plunging fire up and down, like the military crests and higher elevations and things. Yeah. Generally speaking, at least on this northern edge of the map, it's pretty tough mudding.
Yeah.
There's a lot of elevation, there's a lot of ridges, there's cliffs and things like that.
Yeah.
Which means it's very slow going. Mm-hmm. This isn't a game where you're kind of charging across the map up and around here at least. And that's really what it ended up being.
And even my guys, I had a lot of reinforcements on the far side of the island. It took a long time. I had to form up columns, and then I could get 9 movement points rather than the 6. But it took a long time because there's a lot of elevation changes and cliffs.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. Actually, I think the map, while I found it difficult, I think it is pretty.
Oh, yeah.
I think it is pretty. And I thought the terrain features were clearly identifiable. I think just the paradigm shift and the colors and the elevations was also a little challenging for me.
The Ottoman units are all various shades of green.
Yeah.
And the
they kind of just blend
Anzac
in.
units, a lot of them are different shades of brown and orange.
Yep.
And those are like the map is brown and orange as well.
Yeah.
And green in different shades. So at times that was a little bit like, okay.
Yeah.
But I know he's working on some West Front World War I titles in this series, so I'm hoping just to see. It'd be interesting to see something different as well.
Yeah.
But
this game, I know we've been intimidated by this one.
And you can see why.
Right.
I've been reading these.
You've been reading through the rules.
It's a big one.
We got this in I want to say May or June.
Yeah, it was in summer.
And we've been wanting to play it.
And I piddled around with some of the introductory scenarios.
Right.
Trying to wrap my head around it.
Right.
And I remember playing the very first introductory one. You have 15 pieces on the board.
Yeah, so it's not very big.
And it's basically solo. Because it's just some Anzac units killing a couple of fortresses. I think they might be British pieces. I don't remember. But either way, yeah, they're British. I do remember that. But I remember I was like, I think I'm doing the rules right. But because rifle fire in this one is so puny.
Very ineffective.
And in that scenario there's so few pieces, I was like, I'm lining up my guys and trying to shoot.
And the reason
it was hard.
Yeah.
I was like, am I doing this right? No, it's just difficult.
The reason it's ineffective is it's a scale thing.
Yeah.
Out of any hex side, you can only shoot was it 2 steps worth of infantry
2 steps
units?
worth of infantry units.
So you could, at one point I had a stack of, I think, 8 steps. And I'm like, I can only shoot 2. So it was, and I had a machine gun on top, so it was like 3. Yeah. It's hard to get 5 or 6 or 7. And if you looked at the fire result table, man, once you got up to the 8, 9, and 10, which I did one time, it's very easy to do a lot of damage. Now I rolled high on that one that I got up there, but it's a scale thing. You're shooting a few hundred men.
You can't physically fit
that many guys in one area.
Battalions worth of guys
in a 400 yard. Basically,
what a hex side is like.
It's 50 yards,
probably 200 yards.
Yeah, maybe 200.
And so,
because across is 400, so
and you can find like 5 machine gun points worth.
Right.
So you're lining up all your machine guns in those.
And machine guns are more powerful, but they
only because they can add on stack on top of that.
Yeah.
But I remember playing those first, and I was like, wow, this is just difficult to even do anything. But it's, having played more and more and more of this game, it's World War One, right?
Yeah.
You sat in trenches, just basically taking pot shots at each other.
And really,
it's not where the combat was done.
You only did significant damage and took ground by blowing the whistles and going over top.
Or doing artillery strikes where there's concentrations of units.
I had a lot of artillery. We were learning how to use that effectively. That was a little challenging. I think now if we played it again, I would understand that better. You really hurt me bad with one of your artillery.
Well, when you've got big stacks, and that because there's a ton of modifiers and tables in this, and we'll get there.
Yeah.
But like artillery, there's artillery modifiers based on range. So if you can attack like decently short range,
within 2 or 3 range, there's no
negatives.
And it's all positive modifiers because you have to roll low.
Yeah, this is a game. Every roll you're trying to roll low. But then when you combine that with fire combat, you're trying to get all that together, and ideally you want to attack big stacks.
Yeah,
because there's
more targets.
There's more targets.
It's
more
possible
to miss when you have 4 battalions in this tiny little area.
You're going to shoot one time, it's going to hit somewhere, and it's going to hit somebody.
Yeah, and
that's reflected in this game.
And so that's and doing the assaults. It kind of, you have to make a morale check to see if your guys will even do it. And you have to expend your officer points because you've got your sergeants and captains leading the charge, and it's going over the top, right? It's charging open ground. It's going from trench to trench, and it's incredibly bloody. And that's where we felt we did a lot of the real kind of carnage of it all.
That's where the damage came in.
And frankly, it was one of the only ways to really move battle lines.
Yeah.
Which, again, World War One, I think that's pretty indicative of what it was like.
Agreed.
There were times, if you, with positioning, could get a couple stacks, decent stacks with some artillery support to kind of combine fire.
And I think
you could do good damage that way, but
yeah,
you're at most doing like 1 or 2 steps of damage.
Yep.
I mean, it's just hard. Most.
But and the assaults are very, very bad for both sides from time to time.
A lot of the time.
I mean, I would roll, and more often than not, it was an exchange result. You lost one, I lost one. Now, when you lose one, you have to make a morale check, or you're going to run out of the assault. If you both pass, and they're not hard to make because your units' morales are 85 per, 85 or 75, and you're rolling 2 10-sided dice as percentile dice.
And you're trying to roll under that. It's pretty easy.
So and if you both, after taking losses, if you're both still there, you just do it again.
Yes.
So there were a couple times where it was like, I kept saying, please miss your morale. And you did. You rolled like a 90-something. I chased you out of that spot. It was a high ground. So I was like, yeah, I got in there. I think it had a fortification.
Right.
And I felt like,
after that first round of assault, basically your terrain modifiers go out the window.
Right.
Because you're in each other's trenches, stabbing each other.
Yeah.
And so it's just cool, the nuances, and it's the details like that make this game very interesting to me. Yeah. And there are a ton of details. That's why there's a gazillion rules in this one.
Yeah. This one, and we talked a lot about this as we were playing and after we were done, this is a high investment game. you've got to put the time in this one, or you're not going to get a return on it.
Yes.
And reality is, you played a couple of times. We read over the rules. We fiddled around, and then we played. I feel like you're going to have to play this 3 or 4 times to get really comfortable with it. I felt like that also with At Any Cost, Metz 1870. I don't think you can play that game one time and really get the most out of it. They're both kind of complex. This is more complex.
Yeah,
but they both have a lot of rules, a lot of different nuances in the die rolling and the damages. And my favorite part of this game, I kind of joke about it, is here is the booklet. This is called the Booklet of Charts and Tables. It is how many pages? 8. 8 pages, right? How many charts are on this one? Like 6?
Well, like
7?
8.
8?
Right.
So that's 2 pages. There are 8 charts. Just take a look at that. And then you keep turning, and it's just like that all the way through.
Or it's one chart on one page.
Right.
But it's huge.
Look at that red chart down on the bottom. That is your...
That's the
assault table. Look how small those numbers are. Just check that out. And it's really cool. It actually makes sense.
Right.
I think it's well done. I'm sure it took a lot of work and a lot of tweaking and a lot of balancing. But
that's the one nice thing about this game is outcomes of combat's pretty realistic, I felt.
I think so, yeah.
And by realistic, I mean a lot of the time you're not really doing a lot.
No. One reduction, maybe 2.
Like
that was about it.
Because if you're doing a reduction to a battalion,
yeah,
I mean you're basically making a full company and a half's worth out of action.
Yep.
So to do that much damage, you've got to bring a lot to the table.
A lot of firepower.
Yep. And it's,
there's a lot of metal going down range on that, and
having you know. Even odds, you're not going to do that all that often. You're honestly not.
No,
the table's just not set up to do that.
No.
You really have to levy your units and make sure you've got at least decent odds to get any kind of results off of the tables. And it just, it provides you with a lot of thinking. There's just a lot to this one.
It is I think it's a very interesting simulation. There were some other parts with the issuing of orders.
Yes.
You literally had to, you use these, what they call these, objectives?
Yeah, objective markers.
So you had objective markers. I think you have 5 different types. And you have to place these out on the board. And they're color-coded based on your formations. So you're going to place these out on the board, hidden from your opponent. And you're not going to know what they are, but when you flip them over... I
know that there is an objective there.
Right.
But I don't know whose it is or what exactly it means.
But when you flip it over, you can readily see, oh, that's the 77th Regiment's objective. And it's not an objective like a space, although it can be.
Yeah.
It's a line of spaces or a group of spaces or a location and a group of hexes around that location. So it's very cool. There's many ways you can strategically, I was trying to create a line of defense so that you never had one weak area to attack, because all I'm trying to do is keep you off the high ground, push you into the ocean, and basically destroy you. Mm-hmm. You were trying to push me off the high ground, get your feet in there, and keep certain key areas. So I thought that was very reflected in our playing of the order.
Yeah.
The command chits.
And the commands, you kind of issue a command, and depending on the beginning of the game, you kind of have some commands set up, or you can just kind of plan those, right? There's the attacks I'm going to do.
And it can change.
Yeah, you put out these objectives, and that's basically it. When you activate your formation, based on what order they have, they will move towards that objective.
Yeah.
And you have to make it so that they follow kind of the closest possible path and the best way to get there. Mm-hmm. You can't go all higgledy-piggledy and try and circumvent what you're trying to do.
Because it's hard to change those until you've accomplished them.
Because you've given orders to those commanders, and those commanders carry out the orders the best they can. Now, halfway through trying to form this kind of battle line and do this attack in this area, they might come across a ton of enemy resistance.
Yep.
Or they might start failing some morale checks based on other things that happen.
Artillery fire or
and then
assaults.
You start, and if certain things happen, this big attack push that you're making, well, at the end of the round, you have the beginning of the next round, you have this command phase. Mm-hmm. that order might degrade in quality, and you might go from kind of a big attack to a stalled attack, which means they don't move as far, they might not move at all, and then
there's some different modifiers depending on what kind.
And then from there, it might degrade into basically chaos.
Confusion.
They go to like a disorganized defense, where they won't move it further and they try and regroup and get towards their...
so it's incumbent on you to really try to execute and accomplish your objective so you can have a continuation of orders. If you fail, it's a crapshoot whether you're going to be able to recover. It's a crapshoot to be able to get operations, or what do they call them? Commander points?
The officer points.
Yes. Officer points to get those back.
And the more losses you take, you roll on officer leader loss tables to see if your officers are dying.
Well, and I want to say one other thing. I talked about this booklet, 8 pages now. How many other tables over here, Alexander?
Still
10 more tables.
There's still 3 or 4 tables.
And there's still even more over here. And I'm not saying that to jest or to... I think it's awesome. But that's why I say this game is an investment. If you don't invest your time... And the game is, I think, to buy it now out of the P500, I think it's...
It's not even that bad. Like this is...
I thought it was like $80.
Oh, maybe. Is it?
Because it's 2 maps and it's like 400 charts.
Oh my gosh.
And
yeah, if you watch the unboxing... I would just...
It's you pulled them out.
After I pulled out the counters, I was like, what?
Yeah.
There's so
much here
in this box. And it's just, a lot of it's like, okay.
So please, if you watch this video, if you like what we're saying, if you like what you're hearing, because I think Jeff did a great job of modeling this type of combat. And let's remember from history, this was an utter failure for the Anzac.
Disaster.
It was absolutely disastrous. And... I think that's, if you look at this game, we're about 4 turns in, it's getting there. I don't know. I got a lot of dudes coming in there.
Yeah, I'm at the point where I'm just trying to hang on at this point, basically.
And you don't want me to push you off to get a greater victory than is historical.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think Jeff did a great job with the detail, but you're not going to sit down. You're not going to play this 1 time or even twice. Maybe even not until you play it 3 times. Are you going to understand the nuances of the command chits, the nuances of the initiative, and the nuances of the chit pull?
And frankly, to remember everything.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's a big rule book.
Yep.
It's a big series rule book depending on which scenarios you play. There's extra rules or things omitted.
Yep.
Tons of things to just try and remember. And you're right. It's a big investment. This was a tough one to learn. I'll be honest. The rules are clear. There's just
a lot of them. Well, in the rule books, how many there are? Well, there's a rule book, and then there's a series.
There's the series rule book, which is a lowly 40 pages.
This one's 36. The game book,
which has the scenarios in it as well.
Right. It does have about half of it is the scenarios.
But then
the scenarios are in here.
That's just the setup and reinforcement.
Oh, the setup and
for the scenarios. Because
look at that. I just love that picture there.
Just
showing the landing. Wow. Unreal.
Yeah, this is a big one. But
Unreal.
This is a game if you're interested in Gallipoli. I've never played a Gallipoli game before. No, I
never have either.
There's probably some out there, but this is a very detailed game.
Yes.
And Jeff did a fantastic job of putting so much into this game.
Yeah.
It's a lot to learn. This is on the harder end of games I've had to learn.
Yeah. Thank you for putting the time in.
But
I showed up and we just played for 4.5 hours. But
it's worth it for the experience almost.
Agreed. Yep.
It gives you a fascinating World War I experience with the combat, with the command system on a scale that we've never played, and you're still making really tough choices, even though the scale is so broad. And they have to follow their orders, but how they do that is kind of up to you.
Yeah.
And that's just...
and we didn't even get into... There are, I think, 2 or 3 bags of fortifications.
Yeah. So
all kinds of different types.
There's all the printed fortifications on the board from the Ottomans who
but then you can build your own.
Yeah. You dig
Very cool.
Because you dig your own kind of rifle pits.
Yep.
And then overnight, you basically... Those become shallow trenches.
Yep.
And then you can kind of throw out some other fortifications and things.
So they build over time.
Yeah, it's just there's
very neat.
A ton of this. What I'll do is, I'll show you very briefly just a small amount of this.
Can't possibly...
No.
A video... You would need a video series of probably 5 to 10... 30-minute videos on the different aspect.
Yeah.
I mean, at different aspects. It's just that intense.
But I'll show you a little bit, and then we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So here's just a very small look at a portion of the board. And what we were talking about earlier was the kind of the colors of the map. You can see there's the different shades of green, from kind of a darker green to a lighter green, and up here it kind of goes to like a cream and a yellow and a dark kind of brown up here as well. And that's the elevation. And I don't know, there's a chart here. Where's my play aid? There's a lot of play aids in this one, I'll be honest. I can't. Okay, we'll just look at this right here. So, now does this have the elevation on it? No, it doesn't. Fantastic. Well, it's just off map. There's a little elevation chart. This is the kind of the terrain chart here of what the different printings on the elevation mean. But so it's kind of not your typical normally when you look at a wargame map, oh, the green's the foresty stuff and the brown are the mountains. Well, the brown are the mountains, but the green isn't the forest. This is literally just lowland and highland. The colors do not denote any kind of actual terrain features other than elevation. You can kind of look here, this is kind of a light scrub, and then here you've got some steep scrub. I think that's what it was called anyway. And that's actual vegetation, outcroppings, things like that. There are some kind of woods here with real trees. You can see there's printed trench lines, some barbed wire fortifications. Here you've got like a full-blown star fort almost. That's a big naval gun pointing out over the Dardanelles. So there are terrain features, and those are printed over the top of the elevation markers. One thing you'll notice are these brown ridges. There's a ton of those. That's literally what they are. It's the ridges, kind of, here's the peaks, and so you can go and lie your troops kind of along those and shoot across them, but moving over, it costs you more movement points, things like that, and they block line of sight over distance as well. Now, the units here, we've got, this is Anzac Cove, so you have Australian and New Zealand troops here. The Australians are kind of this darker golden rod colour, and then the New Zealanders up here, they're kind of this light tan. Each of these are divided up into divisions within the brigade. So this is the 1st Australian Brigade. Yes. Okay, no, it's 1st Australian Division. And the green ones here, this is 1st Brigade. And the red ones, where's my headquarters marker? This is 2nd Australian Brigade here. And then I have another one. Oh, and 3rd Brigade. It's right there in front of me. And then we have just one New Zealand brigade up here. And obviously when I pull the command chits, because the command chits are in a cup, I pull the red one. So we're going to activate the 2nd Australian Brigade. And basically, all of these guys with the red borders are going to activate. And what they're going to do, this isn't just, they move and fire. That's really not how this game works. As much as I wanted it to work that way, because that would have been much easier. Basically what happens is these guys are going to follow the orders that you previously issued to them. And I will show you what that looks like here. So, I'm currently fake showing you. This is actually the Ottoman army status display. But what you have here is this big set of orders, and you will quite literally have issued your army an order to either do an initial attack, an attack, a stalled attack, you wouldn't do that, a defense, a cordon defense, or some kind of reserve or march or with group order. A disorganized defense is kind of a status you fall into when your other stuff starts not working. And when you do regular attacks, if they start to fail, they'll become this stalled attack, which you do this for one turn, and then you start going into a disorganized defense. And this kind of, how these flow into each other, it's called degradation, where they degrade. It's really, really important in this game. So what I might do is, at the beginning of the game, let's say I was to issue an order to do kind of an attack, what's called an attack. So we have an order marker, called the order for the 2nd Australian Brigade. We're going to say, you guys are going to make an attack. And then, here's the fun part, you've got these objective markers over here, and you're going to put those out on the board. You're going to say, okay, we're going to do this objective here, which is a kind of a point objective. I'm going to say they're going to attack this point, and this little 3 in the middle, it's kind of this point and within 3 hexes. We're going to move and converge on this. We only need to get within that radius, and we're going to attack this point and take this point. And everyone else has to be kind of within that radius. So you can't just have guys staying in the back or fiddling around. It's all they're kind of converging on this point to take this objective. That's the order that was issued. So when I drew that command chit, that's what they do. And what you look at here is, this is the summary of effect of what this attack is. At least one unit in line must move full movement allowance to objective. They must arrive at the objective, or trigger opportunity fire, or attempt to move to assault. So you have to do one of these things. And basically, there's a kind of a... you denote which of your units are kind of like actively doing that, and which of them within the brigade are just kind of supporting that. So, for example, you can set it so you have these kind of 2 line objectives. You can literally say, boop, we're moving over here, and we're going to form a long line here. And we're going to move like this and fan out over to this area. You can set that as kind of, that's what your attack move is. And it's going to take you a couple turns to get there, because you've got to fight through all this stuff. But that's what we're attempting to do. And as you do that, you're saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of my guys are going to be in line, and then 1 or 2 are going to be support, kind of behind that line to fill in gaps as and when we need to. That's what we mean by in line. It's kind of an important designation, but it's something that you just kind of go with. When you have everything's in line, unless you have these kind of in support markers on them. You can use these. So a lot of the time you don't need to, though. If you can remember, it's usually pretty obvious, but that's just kind of me. I like to try and keep the counters down if I can remember who's what. But that's what they'll do. They'll try, at least one of these units is going to move all their movement points to get there, or they're all going to kind of move together. And if they can get there, they're going to do their attacks if they need to. This is a game where you attack, you do your attacks in your attack phase, then you move, and then you have assault. So it's really important. You can't move and then do fire combat. You just can't do it that way. You can move and assault, but you can't move and shoot. You have to shoot then move. So that's an important distinction there. And what happens is you kind of pick up your guys that you want to move. Well, these guys are going to go down this little hill, and then they're going to go up this hill back into this terrain. Well, to do that, they would need to assault. So you've got a couple options. When you move into this hex, a couple things are going to happen, because we're trying to get to this objective, which is underneath this guy. We're trying to take hex 3855. So, as soon as I move into this hex, he has opportunity fire, and he would be remiss not to do that, because it's free. So he's going to kind of shoot at him, and we're going to see what happens there. If I survive that, I can either stick where I am, or I can keep on moving and get into this hex. If I want to move into a hex with a guy, that's called an assault. I have to do an assault move. Now if we go back to this army display, there's this big long line of officer points. It costs an officer point to do one of those assaults, because you have to have officers to lead the charge and to issue the orders. Spend an officer point. I have to make a morale check, which is a percentile. This guy has an 80 morale. We're going to roll. I rolled a 9, which is good. So I pass my morale check. I can do my assault. I move my guys in. We do assault combat. And all going well, we fight back and forth. I kill him, or he retreats. I move in. Great, job done. The important part is doing these combats. It's actually pretty challenging at times. So there's a ton of modifiers. This whole sheet is just a sheet of modifiers and situations. Uphill, downhill, how many units, unit density, all of those things kind of count towards this. So let's say this guy's going to do his opportunity fire. He's in higher elevation, shooting down, and he has this 2, that's his fire value. So what that means is on this chart, he's going to roll on this 2 column. So he's going to roll on the 2 column, and he rolls an 8, which is unbelievably bad in this instance. You want to roll low in this game. So he rolls an 8, and so the base is 0.08. There's a 0.08 chance he inflicted a step loss on me. Now you go through a series of modifiers for that number, and that's again all of these numbers here. So you have the infantry column right here, and you're going through its value. That actual 2 can be modified, and then you've got all these other dice roll modifiers based on any number of things. It's a moving DRM portion. So this is opportunity fire, and I moved, so they get a -3 to their dice roll. That's excellent for them. Relative height, plunging fire. They're firing at me from higher elevation right down, directly down, so that's a -1 for them. Also very good. Our target's infantry. I'm in scrub. That's the terrain that I'm in, so they get a +1. Well, that's good for me because you're trying to roll low again. So there's all sorts of different modifiers. There's also unit density. So we have here. Let me just show you the units we've got. We have, this is 2 steps of infantry, this is 2 steps of infantry, and this is a kind of a free, no-step machine gun. So that's set down there in the little leg valley. So this is 4 steps of units. Well, if we consult our little density DRM table, 4 steps of units is a -2 to infantry combat. If you look here at artillery combat, that's really bad. It starts to get really unhealthy when you start stacking units and they come under artillery fire. So we had -3 moving, -1 shooting down a hill, +1 for being in scrub, -2. So really this is a -5 to my die roll. So this 8 suddenly became a 3. That's good. So we look on this table, our 2, which was all of it 0.08, is now all of a sudden a 0.17, so our odds more than doubled. Now, these are still terrible odds, and what happens is I roll percentiles, and I have to, it's a 17% chance that I inflict a loss. And I rolled a 22. Ooh, that was very close. And we'll go with that. Basically, if I'd have rolled less than 17, so I roll a 6, I do a step loss. Quite simple. This is the odds, basically, of you rounding that up to 1 step loss. And if you look, things get really interesting the further along the table you get. When you start getting really high values attacks, your attacks start to automatically do kind of 1, and then there's a 25% chance you might do a 2nd step loss. If you can start getting all the way up here into this table, which, fair play, if you can do it, it's very difficult, you're doing terrible, terrible losses. But the majority of the table here is less than 50%, honestly. If you can start getting to these really, really negative numbers, if you roll well and get lucky, and if you roll a 0 and you start getting negatives, you can get into some good numbers with pretty low level value. So there's a lot of stuff to be had there. Now, I didn't. Here's what's really interesting. I rolled a 22. This is called a near miss. Because I rolled my percentiles, I failed, but I failed within a certain tolerance, they still have to make a morale check. So these guys are still going to make a morale check, and you kind of pick the one with the highest value to roll against. Well, it's 80, and we're going to make a morale check. I rolled a 68, that's less than 80, I passed my morale check. Again, if I roll an 88, I'm higher than 80, I fail my morale check, which means I got to stop what I'm doing and can't move any further. And then you start to get into things like confusion, where the status of your units becomes confused. And when you're confused, you take terrible negatives when you are on the offensive, things like that. But that's really what a lot of this is. The combat is rifle fire, like small arms fire, is usually not all that effective unless you have a lot of it and a lot of advantaged positioning. But so much of it bogs down into kind of battle lines, defensive lines, field fortifications, regular fortifications, that it's incumbent upon you to really move in an assault. So if you spend those officer points passing morale check, you can move into an area and you can do an assault. And the assault table, so this was the fire combat table, as big as it is. This is the assault table, even bigger. And it effectively, you basically calculate your numbers that you have and how many guys you're bringing in, and then you cross-reference on the table, and then you roll odds. Again, a lot of this is percentile rolling for a lot of these checks. You basically roll odds, and this is an 85. So let's say, just for example, after all the modifiers and all the values, we were right here on this table, just random. So we ended up, we ended up with a 3 strength for the attacker and a 3 strength for the defender. Boom. So you consult this little kind of miniature table here. I rolled an 85 on my percentiles. 85 is 45 plus, which means the attacker takes 1 loss, the defender takes 0 losses. That's kind of what this is here. If I'd have rolled a 13 through 44 percentile, we would have both taken 1 loss. And if I'd have rolled a 0 to 12%, just the defender would have taken a loss. So when it's even odds like that, 3 on 3, only a 12% chance that the attacker comes out unscathed. There's a huge chance, more than 55% chance, that I'm going to get snubbed. My guys are going to die and I'm going to do nothing to the defender. And that's kind of the case how it is. With the higher these numbers get, the worse it can get for the attacker. And again, it's a volumetric thing. You're sending quite literally battalions of guys over the top into trench warfare. So many lives were lost, and so many lives will be lost if you do that without any kind of forethought, I suppose. It's very easy to just throw your guys away, and that's a lot of what had happened in certain stages of World War One. Just tens of thousands of lives were just thrown over the top, and it's really easy to kind of get bogged down in doing that because you feel like you have to do the assaults to make any progress, and the reality is you do. But being able to pick that up when you're a defender, having lines of machine guns makes your defense significantly stronger, as you would expect. You sit there in your trenches with your machine guns, just gun the guys down as they come over no man's land. There's just a lot of nuance to the World War I combat, which even at this huge scale, you still get what feels like a very personal game. So this isn't nearly everything. There's so much to do with the command activations. There's just so much here, we just can't show you everything. So we'll just wrap up with a few kind of final thoughts here. So that was just a very brief look at some of the units and combat and activations, but there's so much more to this game. You gotta play it. You gotta kind of
and you talked a little bit in that middle part about the different dice. There's just so many different. There's the to hit dice, and there's the percentage to hit dice, and it's really
morale check dice.
It's just really cool. There are a lot of cool elements,
and that's just it. this game gives you an unprecedented level of detail and minutia.
Yeah.
This is a game where shooting down a hill matters, but it actually matters to a degree. In other games, the high ground gives you like, I'll give you a +2.
Yeah, here it was like a +1, and it really only improve your odds by like 6%.
That -1, translates into a very small movement of how much damage you're actually going to do on that scale.
But it does matter because the rolls are so hard that that extra little percentage point is important. So I really enjoyed the feeling I got from playing this game. I really did. I'm very interested to see the system used in, say, some of the Western Front.
Yeah. Oh gosh, he told me which one he was working on.
Okay.
And I'm gonna say the wrong one if I say it.
Okay.
But he's working on big battles of World War I.
2 or 3,
Somme, Passchendaele.
Yeah.
Those types of iconic battles. It's that kind of thing that he's working with.
So in this time of centennial, revisiting of all things World War I, it seems, I think Jeff has done a great job of putting this one together. And obviously this is 1915, so the centennial of this battle was
a few years back,
4 years ago. But it's still fresh in everyone's mind, and I think there's a lot of interest in World War I. It's a different... we played our first World War I game together was Fields of Despair.
That was the first real one.
Yeah, three years ago. And we love that. We've played a couple since then. This and Brave Little Belgium and 1914. I mean, there's other games that we've played and enjoyed. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, this one was entirely different from anything we've played, though.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say, though, that this is for everybody.
I would agree with that. I don't think this is for everyone.
If you are not an analytical person, if you are not in the minutia of the wargaming genre, I would say give this one a pass, only because, I don't know, I just think you're going to be caught up in that rule book, and it's going to be hard for you to figure. I'm making a judgment, but if you're not into that, it's going to be hard for you to get into it.
Yeah, this isn't like pick it up and play it.
Yeah.
It's really not. I mean,
don't make this your first World War I war game, that's for sure.
No, but if you play games, things like the OCS series, where it's big
similar levels of complexity, I think you'll understand.
I'm playing Tunisia 2. Yeah, you could play this.
You could probably jump into this.
This is a kind of a big...
Yeah.
It's a very audacious game.
Yep.
I mean, it tries to do so much and does it all. And that's what I'm very surprised with.
Yeah.
Break out your tweezers.
Yep.
Because you'll need them.
Well, I mean, look at this stack. I think this is what, like 10 units?
And I've got a decent sized table, but there is a ton of things that you can have.
Oh yeah.
Half the blades are like counter sleds, which I don't use.
Yep.
But I know people do use it.
Yep.
And
some people like that structure and set it up.
Campaign,
they're set up, and you've got them in the kitchen waiting to get in here.
Yeah. There's a ton to this. It's very awesome, and you're in control, but that you roll for certain things, and I loved that order degrading system.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Because there are times where you roll to see if they continued their attack, and sometimes they're just like, they kind of just give up.
And sometimes you don't have any choice, right? Wasn't there one?
Yeah.
And these are different.
So things like the stalled attack.
It's like you have no...
You could do it for one turn.
One turn, and then you go to disorganized defense.
It's your organized attack just kind of peters out for a turn.
Yep.
And then you're just like...
And then you can change your order next time and do something different.
We could try.
Yeah, some of these others...
pretty bad.
Like your initial attack and your... What was that other one? Just a normal attack. You can continue them if you make your roll.
Yes.
Which is hard to do. It's not easy, but it's doable.
Yeah.
Yeah, very neat system. That's what I'm saying. I think you got to play this 3 or 4 times to really catch those nuances and get that part of the game, to understand what you should be doing and how to do it. Yeah, very, very interesting game.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and interesting I think is a great word.
Yeah.
It's reading through this, there is a ton of history in the game book. I learned a lot of little bits and pieces about some of the big battles that went on that they highlight, that was also very interesting to me. And again, we've not played a game in this kind of theatre, really. And that's always something I really enjoy. I was reading the rules. I looked up a Gallipoli documentary.
Yeah, you were talking about that. Yep.
Just because I'm like, well,
you're interested.
I want to know. I want to know what actually happened.
Yeah.
So that I know really what I'm doing.
Yep.
And just give me a frame of reference as
well. And it's like any war game. We always ask ourselves, what are we supposed to be doing? And we're basing that on our historical knowledge of the campaign. You kind of want to kind of do the same thing, or at least...
Not in this one, you don't.
Well, absolutely you don't.
Disaster.
You do as the Ottomans. You want it to go exactly that way, but...
And that's the one thing that really drew me to this game, is it's kind of something that we're almost like ashamed of, because it was such a military disaster. In England, it doesn't get talked about all that much outside of the hubris, all that kind of stuff. And I know that there's memorials all over the world, especially in Australia and New Zealand, for the lives that were lost here.
Yeah.
And it's just having a game of this scale, you get to redo it. You get to try and do it differently. What can you do differently? Can you do anything differently? Right?
Yeah. Can you even?
And because the mistakes that were made in real life were like, why did they not do this thing?
Yeah.
If they'd have just done one more thing, they could have linked up here, they could have cut off some supply lines, maybe eased up and done some reinforcements here, and it just weren't done. So trying to best what was a terrible situation for the Entente in this one, it's a fascinating kind of exercise to go through.
Well, and it's also very interesting that this was Churchill's really big disaster when he was young, and he ultimately fought back,
and he fell completely out of favor
for a long, long time.
And it's him coming back,
and leading
in a career where they were desperate, basically.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's great.
Very
history.
Interesting.
And the game is great detail to it.
Mm-hmm. And this is a beautiful production. Map's nice, counters are great. They're small counters. They're the really small counters.
Yeah,
but they look good. They're not hard to read.
What else? How big are these? Do you know?
I don't know.
These are
0.4? So I don't know.
I don't know what.
I'm terrible on measurements.
Is there it's like 4/8 of an inch?
Yeah, they're small counters.
I don't know.
They probably says in the. But yeah, they're small counters. But they're actually
like 1 centimeter to me.
Yeah, but they're very readable. There's not a lot of information on them.
At least the information that's on them is mostly just identification stuff.
Right.
They have a fire value and a morale value,
and that's pretty much
those are the two really important things.
Yep.
There's a NATO symbol,
and then they have the NATO symbol detailing what unit it is. And there's only a couple units. It's artillery, machine gun, infantry, and there's cavalry unit.
Yeah, there's a couple of others,
like
different types of. There's like naval guns, artillery,
the Janissaries. Those were interesting.
The gendarmerie as well.
Oh, right. Well, sorry. We talked about the Janissaries, but
yeah, there's like hand cannoneers.
Yeah, right from like Middle Ages. They said a big J on them. So anyway,
I keep in my brain. I call them that. But
yeah, right.
But I don't know. I had a fun time. There's a lot in this though. This is 6 months worth of trying to get it on the table.
And if you feel like we're struggling on telling you I think we are, because I think we both liked it. I think we both liked a lot of elements about it. I just think we want to make sure you understand what kind of game this is. Because sometimes people buy these things and then it never gets played. It sits on your shelf and it never gets played.
And this is a game that doesn't deserve that.
No.
This is a game that deserves to be played.
Yeah.
Because it is something so different from what else is out there.
Yeah.
And that's what I enjoyed about it is, it's a ton of input from the rules and learning. And it is a lot. But it presents a very interesting decision-making in front of you, and it's pretty realistic as well.
Yeah.
That's something that I really enjoyed about that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you guys tuning in. This has been Gallipoli 1915 from GMT Games, and I've been Alexander.
And I'm Grant.